Namaskaram, Vanakkam. Welcome and good evening, everyone. We're thrilled to have you all join us today for Kalainirai Foundation's first program since its inception in March 2023. My name is Kaisani Sunil. I'm a senior at the University of Washington in Seattle. I'm a volunteer for Kalainirai Foundation, and I also serve as the treasurer for the foundation. Kalainirai Foundation USA is a 501c3 nonprofit organization started with the blessings of Jagadguru Sri Shankara Vijayendra Saraswati Shankaracharya Swamigal of Moolam Naya Sarvagnya Sri Kanchi Kamakoti Pitam in March 2023. Kalainirai's mission is to support and promote the preservation of Bharatiya heritage, traditions, culture, and knowledge systems in the U.S., Bharat, and around the world, primarily through youth engagement. We hope to accomplish our mission through education and awareness programs such as today's workshop, drama productions, performing, and visual arts. It is Sri Periva's Agnya to also organize heritage travel tours for youth and their families in the U.S. to spend time in Gramams in Bharat. We plan to initiate youth volunteerism in local communities in the U.S. and in Bharat through programs that connect youth in the U.S. and around the world with their counterparts in rural Bharat. We hope you will stay in touch with us and join us for our work as we make progress. With that, we will move on to today's workshop with Dr. Sri Karthik Raman. But first, a little bit about him and the workshop today. I'm going to hand you off to Raghav Sunil.
Namaskaram, Vanakkam. My name is Raghav Sunil. I'm a high school junior in Sammamish, Washington. I'm a volunteer on the board of the Kalainirai Foundation along with Kaisani. Just like many of you, I've often wondered why my parents make me observe a Hindu birthday and an English birthday, or why some of my North Indian friends observe Deepavali a day or two apart, or why different regions of India have a New Year's and harvest festivals that are at slightly different times of the year. To solve these mysteries for us today, it is my privilege to welcome and introduce to you Dr. Sri Karthik Raman with a workshop on demystifying the Hindu calendar. Dr. Karthik Raman is a professor at the Department of Biotechnology, IIT Madras. Sri Karthik holds a PhD from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. His research group works in the area of computational systems biology. He teaches courses on computational biology and systems biology at IIT Madras and has also authored a textbook on computational systems biology. Sri Karthik has a background in computational science. He's very passionate about astronomical computations, especially related to the almanac or Bharatiya Panchanga. He's been an active participant in the Sri Kanchi Kamakoti Pitam Panchanga Sadas since 2019, and also computes a daily Panchanga for social media circulation for the Veda Dharma Shastra Parivarana Sabha, VDSP Kumbakonam, and Ashtangam, an almanac with 8 components. He has co-developed open source repositories as well. Sri Karthik has co-founded a company, QBiome, which offers research consultancy for pharma and FMCGs. He's also a founder of a nonprofit organization, Sedu Mandaram, that focuses on crowdsourcing funding for Sanatana Dharma activities. Welcome to Kalainirai, Sri Karthik Raman.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So let me just get started. Let me share my screen. Okay, I hope my screen is perfectly visible. So can we get started?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So thanks everyone for the wonderful introduction and for the invitation. Really nice to see the youngsters out here and very nicely talking about all of these things with perfect pronunciation of all the Bharatiya names and Shankaracharya and so on. So with that, let me quickly get started with an invocation. So Shuklam Bharatharam Vishnu Sheshadapram Sukhipasam Prasannadanam Dhayat Sattva Vidhnopashantige Sada Shiva Samanam Dham Shankaracharya Madhimam Asmadacharya Padyanta Mande Guru Paramparam Shruti Smriti Purnanam Alayam Karunalayam Namah Bhagavad Shankaram Lokashankaram Adityaya Somaya Mangalaya Budhaya Chan Guru Shukra Shankhya Rahave Ketave Namahan Arogyam Pradadatamo Dinakarashandroyasham Kunam Putin Bhunushta Shubham Shanayash Prabhyam Gurudwar Guru Takir Komanabak Vilas Maturam Bandom Dam Satada Bahut Bahubalam Nisharam Ketan Karasyan. So this is an invocation to, of course, Ganesha, our gurus, and the Navagrahas. With that, let me get to my first slide. The talk's being titled Demystifying the Hindu Calendar. And I think, given that we are so used to other calendars, the complexity or the apparent complexity of the Panchanga seems that somebody has to demystify it for us. So let me attempt that in any case today. I would really like for this to be very interactive. I don't want to just keep lecturing on and on about various aspects of the Panchanga. I would like to see more questions coming in. So I hope you have the link. So maybe somebody can just post the link again on the chat so that people can readily access that and start chiming in with the questions. So I do see at least one question on that already. But please do keep more questions coming in. As you see from my litany of affiliations, I do a lot of work in computational science and computational biology. But I've been really passionate about the Panchanga, and I consider myself an enthusiast and not an expert. But the good thing is, I'm plugged into a large community of experts. So I'm sure you'll have some questions that go beyond my knowledge, and I'll be happy to consult with them and get back on these things. With that, let me just get going. So what is a Panchanga? So it is more than a calendar or an almanac. It's a detailed reckoning of various astronomical events and festivals. If you see, the purpose of a calendar itself is in some sense keeping track of time and some sort of commemoration. You want to mark certain events in history and you want to sort of remember them, remember your history and so on. But Panchanga essentially is timekeeping on a very different plane, as I'll show you shortly. And biggest question for most people is, when do you celebrate festivals, right? When should you celebrate Deepavali? Right? So this becomes like a standard question for all of us, and this is in some ways how the Panchanga helps. But as Shankaracharya Swamigan says, the Panchanga is like really, really important for various aspects, and it sort of helps people observe various anushtanams and keep them rooted to that tradition and culture. Is there a question already? I see a raised hand. Please go ahead. It's too profound a question for me to answer, but I have something coming up on the next slide for that. So the question is, so if you haven't, others don't have the Slido open by the side, there's a question as to why time even exists, right? And that's like really beautiful. It's a stream that flows, and I'll talk about it, and it's even mentioned in the Taittiriya Aranyakam, as I will tell you shortly. But why is calendaring a challenge? Right? And if you see, lots of recent civilizations and religions have developed their own calendaring. And typically, all the challenges stem from this very fact that the tropical solar year, which is the time the Earth goes around itself, goes around the sun, is 365 days, 5 hours, 8 minutes, and 46 seconds. This 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 46 seconds is what causes a lot of grief and so on, so to say. And timekeeping has been a challenge because you need leap years, right? So if you say a year is 365 days, you will slowly start going out of sync with the equinoxes and things like that, because there are obviously observable phenomenon that one wants to connect to and relate with and so on. Apparently, I believe the Egyptians used to have the reference point as flooding of the Nile. So 1 year or a samvatsara is the period between 2 floodings of the Nile. But you know, there are other cultures and other civilizations that have had various other approaches to calendaring, and we had a completely different approach to calendaring, which is what I'll talk about. The Julian calendar that many of you may have heard of started off in 46 BCE, and the Gregorian calendar, which we all very widely use today, started off in 1582. But you'll be shocked to know that to sync the calendar with the equinox, they ended up deleting 10 days from the Gregorian calendar in 1582. So you will see that there was, after October 4th, the next day in the Gregorian calendar was October 15th. Okay, and Britain, in their own unique way, adopted this Gregorian calendar much later, and so they deleted September 3rd to September 13th of 1752. So you know, there is nobody born between September 2nd and September 14th in that year. So these challenges stem from the fact that you have this leap year, and if you start doing 365 if you approximate this as 365.25 even, you start having small fractions that add up, and start causing a deviation from the equinoxes. And as of today, we say that we will have leap years every 4 years, but we will exclude leap years thrice in 400 years, right? So 1900 was not a leap year, 2000 is a leap year, 2100 won't be a leap year, so also 2200, 2300, but 2400 would again be a leap year. And it's too far into the future. And if you work with some of these software packages, it will actually say that, hey, the date you ask is too far into the future, and I can't tell you with certainty. Because there's a very good chance that we will say that in 3000, we will have to subtract 1 more day to sync the calendars and so on. So basically, there's a lot of challenge in keeping time, right? And we've had a much longer vision of time. And so here goes a sort of answer to the question. So this beautiful passage occurs in the Taittiriya Aranyakam. It says Nadiva Prabhavat Kachite and so on. But so think of a river flowing from a perennial source, and there are many other smaller rivers that flow into her, but she is broad and she doesn't stop. So this is time. It just exists. It just exists. Okay. So why is a big question. But there are many sections of time that flow into Samvatsara, which is like a year. And there are also much smaller units of time. You'll be very, very surprised that, in fact, I would encourage all the children to go and read this Wikipedia article, which is surprisingly well written, unlike other articles on Hindu culture and tradition. There's this measure of time, and it shows that how we have measures from right all the way up from microseconds to like several centuries, billions of years, trillions of years, and so on. So the perspective of time as per Hindu tradition is like really phenomenal. Okay, and you can't really see this time. And These divisions are also mentioned in the Vedas. So it says Kala, Muhurtaha, Kashtaha, Ahoratraha, and so on. Ardhamasa, Masa, Ritavaha. So Ardhamasa is half a month, like, or a fortnight. Masa is month. Ritavaha, Ritu is 2 months. Samvatsara is 6 Ritus or 12 months and essentially a whole year. Right? So you have 15 muhurtas in a day. I'll talk about some of this later, and we'll also try to do some simple math so that we understand everything. And the other thing that all of us can visually observe is the Uttarayanam and Dakshinayanam, which is 6 months apparent northward journey of the sun, as you observe from the earth, and apparent southerly journey, and so on. And the Jyotisha Shastram also elaborates on these divisions of time, and importantly provides a very detailed framework to determine them and decide the various times for various anushtanas. When are you supposed to do Sandhyavandanam? When are you supposed to do X? When are you supposed to do this? And so on. So when it says Kala Vidhana Shastram, Jyotisham. Okay. So what day is it today? So here is the Sankalpa that many of you might have recited. So those of you who do a Nitya Puja would recite it every day, but others would recite it on at least special occasions, special pujas, and definitely on the Yajurupa Karma day or whatever Rupa Karma. So it says something like Adya Brahmana Dutiya Pararje. The thing to notice, it says Adya Brahmana, which means that it is the current Brahma, which means that there have been several Brahmas before and several Brahmas after. So it's like just a very, very, very long flow of time, an infinite time in which we are there for like a bare speck. And it says Adya Brahmana Dutiya Pararje Shekavaraha Kalpe, and so on. Vaivasvata Manvantare Ashtavinkshatitame Kaliyuge. It says we are in the 28th Kaliyuga of the current Vaivasvata Manvantara in one of the Kalpas. Right? There are so many Kalpas, so many Manvantaras, and so many yugas inside of that. And then it says the Desham. It says Jambudvipe, Bharatavashe, whatever, where we are located. And then it says Prabhavadinam Shaktyaha Samvatsaranam Madhya. Of the 60 year cycle that begins with Prabhava, we are in Shobharanama Samvatsare, Uttarayane Vasantarito, Vrishabha or Jyeshtha Masa, based on whether you follow the lunar calendar or solar calendar. Dutiyayam Shubhatito, Bharvasari Yuktan. Today is a Sunday here, it's a Saturday there still, I know. Rohini Nakshatra, which is there only till 9:03 IST. Yuktayam, and then Sukarma Yoga. This is, I'll tell you what these combinations are. The Sukarma Yoga, Balavakarana, which again is only till 9:46, which is the first half of the Dvitiya Tithi that we have, and so on. And this says a ton more than just saying May 21, 2023. Because with this, you literally can have a map of the sky and so on. I mean, this basically correlates with a point in time where the sky looks at a particular in a particular fashion. Okay, so May 21 is very useful for us. It's a very standard reference, and it's essentially a constant reference, at least for a few thousand years. Still, we decide to reform the calendar, the Gregorian calendar. This is a very, very useful reference for us. But what we have is a lot more complex, and it says something like a few trillion years have elapsed in the life of the present Brahma. And this is the level of complexity. Yes, there are different Brahmas. There are multiple universes, and there will be Brahmas after this. The next Brahma will be Hanuman for those who are interested, and so on. So we'll get to that probably at the end, but I'm just keeping an eye on the questions. So keep the questions coming in. I'll try to at least insert answers to a few of them when I can, but we'll try to take a lot more of them at specific points. Maybe, I'll have a short pause in a few minutes where we can discuss a few more. And so this is how complex it all is. And we're trying to capture a particular point in time in as much detail as possible. And I have this in Devanagari, but if somebody wants the slides, I can change this to some Roman encoding or something like that. But I encourage all of you to pick up at least one Indian script so that you can readily read a lot of our really excellent literature. Okay. So what are the different schools of reckoning of a year, essentially, right? So this is what the Panchaka is all about. So there is a Sauramana system of reckoning. There is a Chandramana system of reckoning. And in fact, there's quite a lot of mixing in some sense. Right, so a lot of the festivals, even those who follow a Sauramana calendar or a Sauramana tradition, typically Ramanavami is always Chaitra Shukla Navami and so on. There is a Nakshatramana system. There is a Barhaspatya system, which is a little bit prevalent in the north, mostly for reckoning the year and so on. And there is Savanamana, which is a very simple 30 days a month sort of system, which was apparently in use for all financial transactions and things like that. So they're very interesting. But let's focus on the Sauramana and Chandramana a little later today. Most important, this is what I think a lot of you may have been splitting hairs about, is there are different schools of computation. And this is actually a challenge because there should only be like one ultimate computation. There is, as there are scholars who have beautifully said this, there is one sun, one moon. There's no point in having multiple panchangas that try to calculate these differently. But they exist for various reasons. So there is Vakya Ganita, which is based on Vararuchi's Vakya. Vararuchi was a scholar who existed a few centuries ago, who made these Vakyas. I'll tell you what those are if time permits later on. And then there is Drig Ganita, which is observational. And Sri Kanchikamakoti Peetham follows Drig Ganitam from 1877, right? I also note that it is, we are so used to saying the common era years, but it is Kali 4979, Vrishika Masam or Kartike Masam for those of you who know Tamil, the last day of Kartika Masam in Kali 4979. At that point, the 65th Shankaracharya Swamigal, Sri Sudarshana Mahadevendra Saraswati Swamigal, he conducted a sadhas where they established that the Vakya Panchaga has deviated significantly from current observational astronomy, and there is a need to switch, the computations and so on. Right? But nevertheless, I think the most interesting part is that Vararuchi's Vakyas and various texts of Surya Siddhanta are testimony to the the huge astronomical or mathematical prowess of ancient Indians. And if you see that a lot of all the math that we developed was always for something that was connected to our tradition, to our culture, to our rituals. I mean, I don't like to use the word ritual because it has a poor connotation, but all our anushtanams, right? So that is what the math was developed for, right? So people estimated pi so that they could build better Agnihotra Vedis and so on. And or the Pythagorean theorem, the so-called Pythagorean theorem, should no longer be attributed to Pythagoras. But if you see today, all these computations still exist, and the method of reckoning is essentially the same. The logic of computation is still the same, but how you compute has changed because you now have tables instead of the Vakya tables that earlier scholars wrote. You have other tables from present day observational astronomy, so either from NASA or ISRO or whatever, and there are these what are known as ephemerides. There are these ephemerides which essentially have capture the position of planets across time. So for Panchanga, basically you need to know the position of the sun and the moon. Well, you also need other planets, but the most important for everyday reckoning or the most central ones are the position of the sun and the moon. And of course, one other very important aspect is when the sun rises and so on. I'll talk about that later on. But the good point is that this ephemeris being a tabulation of all these calculated positions, it's so readily available. You can access through like a Python API and so on, which has helped folks like me who have very little exposure to the traditional Panchanga computations and so on to jump in and actually contribute in a meaningful fashion. So it has really enabled everyone to perform Panchanga calculations. So a question just to get the students and others a little bit more interested. So what is the current Vedic Ritu? Right, so there are 6 Ritus. I've listed 4 of them here. So it's Shishira, Vasanta, Grishma, or Varsha. Anyone with an answer? Okay, Guru
Grishma.
Gohan is an answer.
I think
Yes,
it's
Guru Gohan,
spring.
go ahead.
I think it's spring.
You think it's spring? That's right. But it's going to change very shortly. It's going to change very shortly. Vasanta Ritu, that's right. Yes, excellent. So let's go on. So now the most interesting part. So what are the panchangas, the 5 angas? Very interestingly, so if you look at the Gregorian calendar, we talk about the year, month, date, and perhaps a day, right? But here we leave out all the higher level things, including the Ritu and so on. But the most important aspects of a panchanga, this is of a given day, right? On a given day, there is a tithi, there is a vasara, there is a nakshatram, yoga, and karana. Okay, let's see what all these are in a moment. But beyond just mapping the sky for us, knowing the daily panchanga has also a lot of spiritual benefits. It says, there is a shloka that says, Ticheshcha Shriyama Apnoti, Varad Ayushya Vardhanam, Nakshatra Dharate Papam, Yoga Roga Nivaranam, Karana Karya Siddhischa, Panchanga Phalam Uchyate or Panchanga Phalam Uttamam, and Etesham Shravana Nityam, Ganga Snana Phalam Labet. So you get a lot of punya from just knowing what the panchanga is for a day, and then presumably applying that knowledge in your daily activities and so on. Okay, so what is tithi? Very, very central, very, very important because it is something that you can see with your naked eye practically every day. You may not be able to see the nuanced differences between multiple tithis, but you can surely see when it's a new moon, when it's a full moon or a half moon, and so on. So this is essentially the relative difference in the position of the moon from the sun. So mathematically speaking, it's a difference in their longitudes. And when they are coinciding, it's Amavasya. And from there it starts. I mean, that's the end, if you will. So, and then is the Prathama, Dvitiya, as we are at today. Just 30 equal divisions of the Tithis. So you have Shukla Prathama, Shukla Dvitiya, Shukla Tritiya, and so on to Shukla Chaturdashi. And then you have Shukla Panchadashi or Purnima, followed by Krishna Prathama, Krishna Pratipat, or different ways to say Krishna Dvitiya, Krishna Tritiya, and so on, till Krishna Chaturdashi and Krishna Panchadashi, which we more famously call as Amavasya. So these are the Tithis. So if you have any questions, please keep them coming. I do have an eye on the question box. Okay, then Vasara, which is the weekday, it starts at sunrise. This is very important to note. Every day in the Panchanga starts at sunrise and ends at the next sunrise. So it's not like at midnight or something like that. There are other reckonings, I'll come to that, but typically it starts at sunrise and it ends at the next sunrise. And so you have Bhanu Vasaras today, which is Sunday, then Monday, Tuesday, Indu Vasara, Bhauma Vasara, Swami Vasara, and so on. And there are these horas every day, and there is a very interesting connection between this and what Vasara it is, and so on. I'll try to come to that if there is time at the end. But suffices to know that Vasara, or the day of the week, is another very important anga or limb, as they call it, of the Panchanga. There is Nakshatram. These are the asterisms that the moon itself transits by. So this is solely based, obviously, on the position of the moon alone and not the sun. And there are 27 nakshatras and 108 quarter nakshatras or padas of these nakshatras. Padas, which is like 1/4 of each of these nakshatras and so on. And these are equally distributed across the 12 rashis. So some of you might know, so you might be born in a particular nakshatra, and you know that there is a particular rashi that you'll say that some Chitra nakshatra Tulara Jataya or something like that. You will perform a sankalpa like that. Okay. So these are the nakshatras. So you have Ashwini, Bharani, Kritika, Rohini, and so on. I hope you remember the names of the nakshatras. Do learn the names of the nakshatras. I have a question coming on that very shortly. And there are yogas. So this is computed from the sum of positions of the moon and sun. Interestingly, so this is the sum of the longitudes of the moon and sun. And these yogas go by the name of Vishkamba, Preeti, Ayushman, and so on. This is very different from the Amrita Yogam, Siddha Yogam, and Makara Yogam that we typically see in the Panchangas, right? So that is different. So those are simply based on Nakshatra Vara combinations. So on Sunday, if you have Revati Nakshatram, it happens to be a particular Yogam, and so on. But this is based on the position of the moon and sun. This is the Panchanga Yoga, which is very important again, which is slightly underused. I think there has unfortunately become a tradition of saying Shubha Yoga, Shubhakarana Yuktayam. I've even seen people who say Shubha Nakshatra, Shubha Yoga, Shubhakarana Yuktayam, and so on. It is important to actually know what is the Yoga, Karana, Nakshatra, Tithi for a day and include them in your Sankalpa if you are doing one. I've seen that in the Telugu tradition, even for Sandhya Vandana, they do a Deshakala Kirtanam, meaning they recite this entire Sankalpa. And there are these Karanams, which are the last of the 5 Angas, which is essentially a half Tithi. So if it's a half Tithi, it is obviously connected to both the position of the moon and the sun. And it's essentially what a Tithi is. So Shukla Prathama has Kingstubhnum as the first, the Karanam for the first part, and Bhava as the Karanam for the second part. And if you see, there are 4 fixed Karanas, one of which you see here, Kingstubhnum. And then you have many others which go like Bhava, Balava, Kaulava, Taitila, Garaja, Vanija, Bhadra, continue. Bhava, Balava, Kaulava, Taitila, Garaja, Vanija, Bhadra, and so on. Right? So these 7 again cycle all till the end, when at Krishna Chaturdashi you have Shakuni, Chatushpat, and Nagakaranam. So I can share tables. Somebody had asked me this, so I can share these tables with you, and I'll be happy to answer some questions also. Okay, so here's a question. Who wants to answer it? So how many nakshatrams are there?
27.
Okay. Good. So can you connect any of these to other Angas we've seen? So what Anga do we have? What Anga, other Anga do we have 27 of? Is there any other Anga with 30? Any other Anga with 16? 60? How many Tithis are there?
30.
30. How many Karanas are there? Half Tithis. It's going to be twice 30. 60. And how many yogas
also
are there?
Varsha, right?
Sorry?
60 is also years.
60 is also the years in a cycle. That's right. Yes. Yes. I'm trying to connect them to the Angas, but very right. And there are also again 27 yogas. Just something to give a pause. So I can take a few questions here. Okay, one more question. So which of the following is a nakshatram? Ashwini, Purvashadha, Bhadra, and Revati. Which of these is not a nakshatram?
Bhadra.
Bhadra.
Bhadra. So Bhadra is actually a Karana. Okay, so now let's look at the months, but I can take a pause here if you have some questions, or just keep the questions coming on Slido. So I can, I have my eye on that aspect. So months are reckoned in different ways. So you have the Saura Masa or the solar month, which is roughly 29 to 32 solar days. So this depends upon how long. And remember, all of this, all of the Panchanga is done in a geocentric way, meaning it's what we observe from the earth, right? So there are particular sections of the sky that you observe from the earth, and in what position in the sky does a particular graha, right? So like the sun or the moon, where does it sit? That's essentially used in all your calculations and so on. So if you see the apparent orbit of the sun around the earth, right? The earth has an elliptical orbit around the sun, but it's all relative, right? So if you fix the earth, frame of reference, then the sun has an elliptical sort of motion around the earth, and it will take different times to traverse different sections of the elliptical sector, right? So each sector of the ellipse. So if you had a circle, you're going to take constant time to zip through any particular section of the ellipse. Any particular section of the circle. But if you had an ellipse, you're going to have different sectors in the ellipse. You just divide it into 12 equal segments, and which are the 12 rashis. So it will take a little longer time to transit through certain rashis than through other rashis. So if you typically see the current Masa, Vrishabha Masa or Ani Masam, it will typically have 32 days. And you'll see that Margari Masam or Dhanur Masam will occasionally have 29 or 30 days and so on. The Chandra Masa, although is fixed, so it is 29.53 solar days, right? Which means that you have 354 days in a year, which is very interesting. And so this is actually you can use this as a hack for making lots of references. I have a question coming up on that later on. So if you see when does, so 354 is the period of the year, you can see how often festivals will repeat. Okay, we'll come to that in a moment. So when does the Chandramasa end? It ends on Amavasya, typically in South India, where it's an Amanta Panchanga. And it ends on Purnima in North India, which is a Purnimanta Panchanga. So if you see, yesterday was Shukla Prathama, so which is when the Jyeshtamasam started in South India, but Jyeshtamasam already started after Vaishakha Purnima in North India. Keshini, you have a question?
Yeah, there's a question in the chat. I'm just gonna ask it really quickly if that's okay.
Yeah. That's right. So, yes, I think, that's absolutely right. So in the southern continent, you should, when you perform Sankalpa, you can, in the southern hemisphere, you can, the Dakshina and Uttarayana are reversed. It's the apparent portion of the sun is definitely reversed. So you can factor that. And interestingly, we also have what is known as an intercalary month or an Adhika Masa, which is because if you add these days up, right? So these 354 and 365 don't sync. So one more sync problem, like your leap year problem. So 354, you lose 11 days a year. So in 3 years, you've already accumulated 33 days. So at some point within the 3 years, there is an additional lunar month that is included. You will see that in the coming year, in the present year actually, in Shobhana Samvatsara, there is an Adhika Shravana, if I'm right. And there is also what is known as a Ritumasa, which is a tropical month, which is, I'll not get into it, there is a tropical zodiac and a sidereal zodiac. A lot of our festivals and Panchangas reckon with the sidereal zodiac. But there is also this tropical, it's the fixed frame of reference. I'll not get into all those details in this workshop, but I'm sure we can have one more at some point of time where we can get into all of these nitty-gritties. And all your festivals are reckoned based on different months. So if you look at Ramanavami, it is Chaitra Shukla Navami. Saraswati Puja or Vijayadashmi is Ashwayuja Shukla Navami or Dashami. Ratha Saptami is Magha Shukla Saptami. So all of these are lunar reckonings. Of course, Makara Sankranti is when the sun transits into the Makara Rashi, which is a solar reckoning. Okay, so here's your question. So if Deepavali is on November 12th this year, then it will be next year, approximately. We may not be able to get it exact. So will it be on November 12th again, or October 15th, October 31st, November 1st, whatever? What is your logic?
2nd of November.
Why so?
Because we have 10 fewer days every year than the English calendar.
So 11, right? So 354. So 11
11, yeah.
days.
1st of November.
So it'll be 1st of November, yeah. And I think it's actually on 31st of October, because there is also when does the Amavasya start and end and all of those. But roughly, right? So this holds even for your star birthdays and so on. Right? So if a child is born on 12th of January this year, the star birthday or the Ayush Yogam for the child will be on 1st of January next year. Of course, this doesn't hold, there is a catch, right? So this may not hold if you were born on 16th of December, it should be the first day of Dhanar Masa. Then it cycles all the way to the back and so on. And there is also the catch that arises from what do you call the Adhika Masa and so on. Okay, so let me just quickly look at the question. So is there a difference between a computerized program? Not really, not really. I mean, there is only one computation. So there is always an accuracy with which people implement various tools and so on. I mean, those of you who've done any numerical stuff will know that there is always some accuracy involved in all of these things. So do you take 3 decimals, 7 decimals, 15 decimals? I also see quite a few questions on chat. I haven't been monitoring them. So it would be nice if everything goes on Slido, because I have an eye on Slido. But I think I can move this window also to the my second monitor and there are some really interesting questions. There's also some spreadsheets that folks have shared with me. I will take a look at these. I'm really delighted to see all these questions. So yeah, so if 2 nakshatras come in the same month, it is the second one that is considered as for reckoning. So that is what Shastram says, right? So that is it does this logic. So there are always deep reasons why these are done, but at least at the first level, you have a rule for reckoning these, right? So, for example, Rama was born in the afternoon, like in the Madhyana period. So you have to look at when Navami is there on Madhyana. But if it is there on 2 days, the rishis have said that it is more important to pick, I think the second one, I don't remember exactly, and so on, right? So we go by all of these elaborate rules that have been handed down to us, right? So that is the typical Sanatana tradition, where you have a particular logic, and it's literally following the tradition. It's essentially a way of commemoration. So there are various ways to commemorate. And in fact, I think for Tithis, it's the other way around. So for Tithis, and this is also in some sense connected with the alignment with the lunar calendar as well, right? So what is more descriptive of the original event or something like that. So I'm sure there is like deeper logic like that if you just dig in a little bit more. And so the observation tools that we have is, so all of these panchalas are actually based on observation. The Vakya is also based on observation, but the issue has been that Vakya is based on observation from several years ago, maybe several centuries ago, and these Vakyas have a date of expiry. So they expire in about a few hundred years, right? Because there is always some non-idealism in the movement of the planets and so on. So you need to readjust, right? And and in any computation, if you actually, after a long period of time, the 7th, 8th decimals and all start becoming very important as well. So these are the challenges. I'll probably spend a little bit time on that a little later. Apologies if the context wasn't obvious. There's a question on chat which says, what are the observation tools that we have to support Drik and so on. So what are the Saura Masas? So there are 12 Saura Masas, Mesh and Rishabha. Rishabha is where we are today. The next Masa is Mithuna, Architra, Vekasi, Aniyadi, and so on. And the Chandra Masas are named after the nakshatra on which the full moon occurs in that month. So in Chaitra Masa, the full moon typically occurs on Chitra Nakshatram. In Vaishakha Masa, it occurs on Vishakha Nakshatram, and in Phalguna Masa, it occurs on Purva Phalguni Nakshatram, and so on. And you also have an Adhika Masa. So there are 13 months in the lunar calendar, because occasionally there is an extra month. This is based on how long, on whether Surya is in the same Rashi when both Amavasyas happen and things like that. But essentially, these are the names of the months. And these are the Ritu Masas. So Madhu Masa is the vernal equinox, March 21st. Right? And then followed by Madhava Masa. In fact, today Shukra Masa starts. And in fact, that is when essentially the Grishma Ritu starts. Right? So because the position of the, I mean, I'll not get into this. There is this issue of the tropical versus sidereal zodiac, but we can talk about this later. And then there's the Shushi Masa, which is the summer solstice and also the start of Dakshinayinam. Dakshinayinam is not start of Adi Masam. So this is an anomaly that the scholars are trying to resolve. This was originally never celebrated like this, but over time, this deviation between the sidereal and tropical zodiac has caused this. And then if you see Sahasya Masa, which is the winter solstice, roughly 22nd of December, is the start of Uttarayanam, and you do see these, celebrations actually happen in the Kanchipatam. So you see Perivar doing a Suryanarayana Puja with the sugar cane and all of that on December 22nd. Right, and of course, Makara Sankranti is equally important. And for those of you who've been parts of these Veda Dharma Shastra Paripara Sabha distribution groups, you would have seen that we had a Surya Puja for both document release for both Uttarayanam as well as Makara Sankranti and so on. So how am I doing for time? I think I have already done 45 minutes. So I'll try to quickly go through a few more slides and probably, I think I have next couple of slides and then I'll probably take a pause and we should handle a lot more questions. And a very nice question. So why do Indian festivals happen a day ahead? I have that coming up in a couple of slides. So units of time. So first is Ahoratram, which is 24 hours, roughly 24 hours. Okay, so all the times are relative to length of day or night. And the length of day or night is roughly 24 hours, right? It will be just a little different. It's 24 hours and a few seconds, I think, or so on. Yama is 1/4 of any time. So in Tamil, we also say Jamam. So Jamam, Yamam, they all mean the same. It's 1/4 of, I say, night or daytime. Right? So this means that this is the time between sunrise and sunset, which is fragmented, or the time between sunset and the next sunrise, which is fragmented into these pieces. So I have some calculations on that upcoming. Muhurta is 1/15th of the day-night time. Ghatika is 1/30th. Right? So it's 24 minutes. And this is very standard. So Narigi, Uru Narigi, 2 Narigi. And if you see, any of you can pick up your Kalyana invitation or Upanayana invitation and you say Udayadi Narigi, something it will say. It says the number of Ghatikas that are elapsed from sunrise. That's what is actually mentioned. Okay, and then you have much smaller. So there is a Vinadi or Vighatika, which is just 24 seconds, roughly this is 1/60th of a Ghatika. And you also have a Tatpara or a Vipala. So they say Nadi, Vinadi, Tatpare in Tamil, and Ghatika, Vighatika, and Vipala or Tatpara. And that is 1/60th of a Ghatika, which is just 0.4 seconds. And you have much, and you see all of these are in sexagesimal base 60. Right? And interestingly, this was also used by the Babylonians, this kind of base 60, although that's an aside. And please note that all times are relative to length of day and night. So Dharma Shastra Ghatikas, as we call them, is always based on the relative time between day and night. So we'll go to some calculations in the next slide. So the most important divisions of the day are the 5 kalas of the day, which means the daytime, which is Pratah Kala, which is the first 1/5. So it is going to be 6 Ghatikas. There are 30 Ghatikas in the morning, 30 Ghatikas in the evening, or Narigas, whichever way you call them. So the first 6 of them is Pratah Kala. The next 6 is Sangama Kala, then Madhyana, then Aparana, which is very important for Tarpanam, Shraddham, and all of that. And then Sayana, which is evening. It ends with sunset and so on. Okay. And if you look, all these kalas will change from day to day. So today you'll say that it is from today sunrise is was 5:45 for me today, 5:45 a.m. for you. For folks in the Pacific time zone, it is roughly around 6 a.m. today. But your sunrise is like 8 p.m. For me, it's 6:37 p.m. and 6:23 p.m. and so on. So all of this has an influence on when you do Sandhya Vandanam, then you should ideally wake up, and all of those things. When you do a Pradosha Puja, and all of these are determined by these times. Okay, and we also say things like Yamagandam is 6 to 7:30 a.m. or something like that, but it's never that, right? It is 1/8 of the time between. So 6 to 7:30 is typically the first 8 portion of the time between sunrise and sunset. So what time is sunrise for you today? You have to reckon it from that. And there are other things like Brahma Murta, Sandhya Kala, Pradosha Kala, and Dinanta, which is very important for Ashocham. So if there is a 3-day Ashocham or a 10-day Ashocham from the birth or death of someone and so on, and other things, right? So the Rahu Kala, Yamaganta, and so on. So let's do some calculations to get this going. So yesterday in San Francisco, I took yesterday because it was 6 a.m. and not 6:01 a.m. So yesterday in San Francisco, sunrise was at 6 a.m. So this is called 00 Ghatikas. So I use this sort of shorthand of a dash for Ghatika and a colon for our standard times or UTC and so on. So this so 00 is sunrise, 30-0 is sunset on every day, right? So that is the relative Ghatika concept. And the next day sunrise is 60, essentially 0, right? It's like saying 23:59 and then the clock ticks over to 00 hours. So like that, it is like 59, 59, 59 here. It's all base 60. And after which the clock ticks over to 60 or 0 as you see it, which is the next sunrise. So what time is noon? Noon is not 12.
It's about 14 hours, 9 minutes.
If someone is speaking up, could you please speak up? So noon, how do you compute it? You need to go half the time, right? Between sunrise and sunset. Noon is basically 15:00. But what is that in PST? Who wants to go? I have more threatening calculations coming up, so I need some volunteers to answer this.
104.
Perfect. Right. So 13:04 PST would be noon. Right. It'll actually be 13:04:30, and I typically like to truncate for various reasons. It's just simpler that way rather than rounding. So can you now convert 6 Ghatikas to PST? So when did Sangavakala start? Yesterday. So how do you go about this? It would be sunrise plus 6/30th of the time between that day sunset and sunrise. Right? So the 6/30 comes from the fact that there are 30. So the 6 is a relative Ghatika. Right? I don't do 60 note. I don't do 60, 1/60 to time between today's sunrise and tomorrow's sunrise. No. So if you have a number, right? So it could be, I have 48, 45 coming up, which is Dinanta. If you have a number, you first take out 30 from it. 30 is sunset, so you can take it out. If you can take out 30. If it is less than 30, you look at just the time between sunrise and sunset and fragment it into the Ghatikas, right? So there are 30 Ghatikas. So the 6/30, and it's going to be 0850 PST. Okay. Here's something more challenging. How do you convert 48, 45? So you need to first take out 30, which is sunset. So that brings you to 28, 2009, right? And then you have 1845. This 18, whenever you see this 1845 or something, which is essentially 18.75, it means that there was a by 8 that existed somewhere. Right? So the 18.75 by 30. And, if you can quickly do the math on that, that's nothing but 5/8. 18.75 by 30 is just 5/8. So it is sunset plus 5/8 into the next sunrise minus sunset. Anybody is brave enough to go for this? I hope it's not visible on my slide because it's like, I don't think it's transmitted across. It's visible like mild contrast the way I've made the slides. So 5/8 between. So you need to figure out how to do this math, right? So 29 to 6 o'clock is basically how many hours? It's about 9 hours and 51 minutes, right? Or no? Yeah. 9 hours and 51 minutes. So you can think of, so you can take 1 hour out, 8 hours you can take out for the 1/8. And which means that you have 111 minutes. Let's make it 112 for simplicity. So 112 by 8. What's that? 14 minutes. So you add another 14 minutes. So, right? So 14. 1 hour and 14, 5 hours and 70 minutes, right? That's going to be 5 hours and 70 minutes. So 1 hour and 14 minutes is the 1/8 part. So you multiply that by 5, you get 5 hours and 70 minutes, which is 6 hours and 10 minutes. This is essentially going to be something like 26:19. 26:18 is what it says. So there's some round off out there. So 26:18 is what? It is 0218 PST on the next day. 2:18 in the morning, past midnight on the next day. When is Pradosha Kala? It's homework for you. Okay, so Pradosha Kala is quickly from previous slide is 30 to 33:75, 33:45. So it is 3 point, the first 1/8 portion of the night. Okay. So that's it. I think I would like to sort of finish in a couple of minutes. Okay, somebody's asking what is PST. The PST is, I hope I got it right, Pacific Standard Time, right? So that's PDT, Pacific Daylight Time. Just PT is what maybe people are familiar with. So, okay. So just to quickly summarize, the time is the basis of all actions, and the idea is actions executed at the proper time bear more fruit. Right? And the cyclic rotation of time, along with the combinations of grahas and nakshatras that indicate the probability of upcoming difficulties, there are also good combinations that give multiple benefits as well. And these are correlations, not causations. So it's just that, people have found these correlations over ages. And we can have a full discussion on this at some other point. But as I've heard the scholars very nicely say, like Sri Ramana Sharma, he says, Graha Suchakaha Natu Karakaha. They point you to things, but they don't they don't cause. So, we have all these people are arguing that how can something so many light years away have an effect on us and so on. These are just correlations. And scientists know very well how to sift between correlation and causation. And this is basically the rishis who knew the subtle nature of time have really seen this over millennia and have handed this down to earth. And there are these very special combinations like Bhaumashvini, Bhanu Saptami, Ardhodaya, and so many, or the Grahana Punya Kalas. Then we are ordained to utilize the time in engaging in lots of japas and so on. Right, and I think I'll reserve this for a future talk. I can definitely share these slides, and the talk is also going to be on YouTube. There are like lots of rules for reckoning. I'll just skip, but the sunrise has a major role. So use a location-specific Panchanga. So please don't faithfully follow your Sri Ranga Bhakti Panchanga from home in San Francisco. Okay, and there are many times a festival in the US must be celebrated a day before they are in India. And well, you can even have this in India. I'll show you in a moment. So because of how the sun rises and so on, a particular event is at sunrise a day earlier in another place, right? So today for me at sunrise it's Vitiya, but for you today at sunrise, meaning today, meaning your earlier day, you would have you might have had Prathama and so on, and which means that yeah, I think I'm mixing it up. So today for me at sunrise is Vitiya, but for you tomorrow at sunrise it may already become Tritiya, which means that you cannot celebrate a Tritiya festival tomorrow. You should have celebrated it today. So which is why it happens on a previous day. So in fact, this is a map which cuts through Bharatam, in fact, right? So everybody on the right of this line had to perform the Ekadashi Vratam. So you see Chennai is on the right of this line and Bangalore is on the left of this line. So people on this side of the line had to perform the Ekadashi Vratam one day earlier than folks on this side of the line. So they're very interesting. So, and this is not new. Panchakas in Maharashtra used to do all of this for a long time, simply because Maharashtra is a very wide state. It has a lot of longitudinal spread, unlike Tamil Nadu or Kerala, which has a more latitudinal spread. So they already had to worry about this. And similarly in Andhra, right? So Andhra is again a very, very wide state where you have Tirupati in this corner and Srikakulam or other places in this corner, right? So this is Andhra. So you see again here a long longitudinal spread for these states where therefore it was part of that tradition to do this. I'll skip through most of this. We can reserve this for a later things. But remember, please use the Panchanga specific to your location. And this is not just between say Chennai and USA. Okay, this is between Chennai and Bangalore or Chennai and Mumbai. So Chennai and Mumbai have different Ekadashis, maybe at least 5-6 times a year. Chennai and Mumbai have different Shradhatithis at least 10-20 times a year. So this is very important even for folks within the country, leave alone outside the country. Okay. So you can also check out some of these things. I have a Twitter channel which presently grappling with because of the API changes from Twitter. But it automatically posts various festivals, some shlokas about the festival and so on. And those are the Telegram channel which tells you a few things. So to quickly summarize, our Panchanga is a beautiful and accurate custodian of our time and our Sampradaya or Dharma. Everything is connected to Panchanga. When should you do what? When do you celebrate Janmashtami or Ramanavami and so on? And there are 5 Angas, Tithi, Vara, Nakshatra, Yoga, Karanam, which make up the Panchangam. And please make a habit of reading these every day. So you have a Panchanga right at home, which gives you some timing. So all these are typically Ghatikas, but there are other Panchangas. I can maybe quickly fire that up. So I have, this is just a daily Panchanga in some sense. Yeah. So this is how it looks. So here it says, Dutiya is still 10 p.m. today. Rohini is still 9:03. So the times that are shown in a Panchanga are typically ending times of that particular Tithi or Nakshatram. And again, if you haven't, if you're not familiar with Devanagari, I can always show this to you in a different script. But please do learn an Indian script. It's really important. And typically, Panchangas don't mention this next yoga, next karana. And so this is also helpful. So there are some Panchangas, especially online, you can see these as well. And there are so many festivals that are there today and so on. So there is Shukra Masa or Grishma Ritu that starts at around 12:39 today. Anyway, so I have computed this Panchanga for several locations and I do share it with people who ask me. So this is based on the Drik Panchanga and very aligned with what the Kanchi Matam follows. Yes, so you can use this link. I can share this link. You can request Panchanga here and I can share it. And some resolutions. Please remember the date as per Panchanga, not just Gregorian. Both are extremely useful and important. Celebrate your birthday, wedding day per Nakshatra Tithi, because that's how the sky looked like when you were born or when you got married. And know how to read your Panchanga. And please, it takes like 1 minute to read the Panchanga every day. And let's maximize our efforts by timing them well. And most importantly, for all the children and youngsters out here, not the children, maybe, sync your circadian clock with the sun. There is a lot of science in that. I can point you to TED Talks by researchers from all over the world who talk about that. But please do that and gain better health and also improve your understandings. And I'd like to acknowledge a lot of people, beginning with Sri Ramana Sharma. I think about 95% of what I've learned here or what I say is directly because of my interactions with him, and I've learned it from him. And Brahmashri Bharnendra Shastrigan, who's, again, he has a fantastic Vakya Panchanga, which is being corrected for various, the various locations and so on. And which is the first step in correcting it to sync it with observational Panchangas. And then also Saket, who helped me collect a lot of festivals and so on. And Vishwas, who's a fantastic developer and who's cleaned up all the Python codes I once scribbled up for my own use and has made them far more usable and far more efficient for the world to take a look at and use it. And I'll share these references so you can see all these wonderful resources and YouTube videos that are like really, really nicely done. So with that, let me close. I still had a few things to talk about, but I think this is more than enough information for one talk, and I think I've actually passed the hour. So really a good time to close. But I'm happy to take some questions. So Keshini, I'm going to pick some questions, or we're going to. I can just go ahead and take these questions. So how come our Vasaras are perfectly synced with the Western days? That's I think the question has to be asked the other way around. So how come the Western days are perfectly synced with the Vasaras? Probably, how people have been keeping time and how it has percolated across the different the civilizations, and perhaps how they were researched. It's a very interesting question. I think I should dig a little bit more into this, because I think a lot of times I get this very interesting question. And in fact, the Vasaras for us are, the cycle is determined by the speed of the various planets and so on. It's very fascinating, but I'll leave it at that, and maybe relegate the next later point. Is there a Panchangam published for PhD by Kanchi Matham? Not really, but what I publish comes close. There are various complications there. Let's not get into it at the moment, because it's so difficult to make it for different, so many different locations and so on. And sometimes, the complications that arise based on the daylight imbalance in these higher latitudes is very, very complicated, right? So as I said, it was already 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. and then the way various vratas have to be performed and so on, it becomes a lot more complex. So on Grishma season, Yugadi as the new year, and 2 months of spring and summer as not really. So it's not always that Yugadi is synced with. See, the thing to assume is actually the vernal equinox, right? And we don't know that because the sky doesn't look the same at that point of time, right? So for us, the new year starts when the sun transits into Mesha Rashi. So, and that happens only on 14th April. And well, Yugadi is New Year because the moon is now in the Rashi where, I mean, moon is in, well, the sun is, the Yugadi is also determined by the position of the sun in some sense, right? So it is the month where sun is in the Mesha Rashi. So then that is when on the Chaitra Purnami, you will have Chitra Nakshatram and so on. So, and there is, very interesting cycle of Parivatsara, Samvatsara, Idavatsara, and so on. Again, higher topics for a later moment. I think I have to click this. I will check this out in a moment. But in the meantime, let me. Pongal technically beyond December 21. Well, that's been well discussed. So it depends upon what you want to call as Pongal. Is Pongal the transition of sun into? It makes sense. Uttarayana is probably a more important observation than Makara Sankramanam. So it maybe makes more sense. But well, we can have Pongal on both days, do puja on both days, right? Which is what a lot of us do. See, it's basically an occasion to do Surya Puja, because it is very important for Surya. And the Kanchi Matham does puja on both days, both on Pongal and on December 22nd. So definitely. And Hanuman Jayanti seems to be celebrated on 2 different dates, months apart. Beautiful question. Very interesting history to this. So first of all, there is this notion of different events happening on different dates and different kalpas, right? So there is the cyclic thing of time, and there was a question about Rama as well, right? So in fact, in Padma Purana, there's a description of how there is a conversation between Rama and Shiva, where Rama asks Shiva as to how other Ramayanas were different from the present Ramayana, right? And so this is, it really takes some time getting used to it. But beyond that, there are multiple, there is this particular Andhra Sampradaya is, it is celebrated on, I think, Vaishakha Krishna Dashami or Ekadashi, just a few days ago, Hanuman Jayanti. And that is coming from the fact that there's a vulture which took a part of Kaikeyi's payasam and took it to Anjana Devi. So that date is also commemorated and so on. It's very fascinating. So more on this maybe offline and so on. And I don't know if we use the Sauramana calendar for daily transactions, right? I mean, we say that in Sankalpa, but I think all the festivals are. I don't think Chandramana is also strictly Chandramana, because the Adhika Masa itself is basically defined by the fact that the sun is still in the same Rashi, right? So they're both lunisolar calendars. Only the month names are either Chandramana or Sauramana. I think that's how I would say this. And Indian festivals lag, I think I already mentioned that briefly. So that's this. Oh, very nice. So I think people should take a look at these spreadsheets. I don't know if they are there on chat. So if you could please post them on chat, it's really nice because it tells you, if you can put in the sunrise and sunset, it tells you when is the Rahu Kalam on what day, right? So which is really nice. And yeah, does the month starting time happen instantly across the world at the same time? Yes, yes, and yes. Right. So any of the panchangas, okay, maybe I'll leave Vasara out of that because that is sort of connected to sunrise. But if you look at either a nakshatra, tithi, or any of these, they are all based on the location of the sun in the sky. Right? There is one sky, one sun, one location. So it's all at the same moment. So and which is why the festivals change, right? So because festivals are decided by when is there Ekadashi at sunrise or no? Or, is there Ekadashi at today's sunrise and tomorrow's sunrise? All these questions, multiple things that have to be answered there. And that is why the festivals change from location to location. As I, sort of showed you this map, right, a few minutes ago. So festivals will change based on location, but otherwise, the tithis, nakshatras are all same across the world. And I can check this. Very nice. So this tells you what is the devata for the nakshatra. And yes, I think I should have more of a chat with this person. Please get in touch with me. This is really wonderful. And I think I answered this already. This is a very profound question. So the first question, is it possible to get the names of Tithi, Nakshatra, Yoga, Karana, and Devanagari? Yes, they're there in my slides. I'll be happy to share the slides and also in that daily Panchanga. And controversy surrounding Rama's Jataka is, I don't know this a major controversy. I'm not really sure what's the controversy, simply because it's beautifully described in Valmiki Ramayana, the present Valmiki Ramayana, for the present Ramayana, for the present Rama. And I think it's quite clear, but maybe I'm not informed enough. But there was certainly no Vakyam Drik. It was all Vakyam or Drik, which must have been unified at that point of time. No, because everything had to agree with observational astronomy. Otherwise, there is no validity for it. And is there a difference between computerized program? Not really. I don't think there should be any difference. It's just in the level of accuracy, as I already mentioned. So I've sort of cleared out that chat. So yeah, hi Anirudh, you can just get in touch with me. I'll just put in my email on the chat. Just karthik.ramran@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and effort. That was a super insightful workshop. Thank you so much. We'd like to now invite Srimati Vidya Jayaraman and Dr. Shri Sham Panchapakeshan, both board members and advisors for Kalainirai Foundation, to close with a few words.
Thank you, Sri Karthik, for a very insightful talk. Jyotisha is called Vedasya Nirmalam Chakshuhu, the eye of the Veda, and Ishvara is called Kalatma. So as Sri Karthik clearly demonstrated to us, the Indian calendar system places practice or Anushtana as the basis. So to understand this subject, it was very useful to understand his references to the Pratah Kala, Sangava Kala, and the calculations of sunrise and sunset, along with the fundamental idea of what is a Tithi or a Yoga or a Karana. So this combination of our Acharyas have stressed on this combination of Dharma Shastra, Jyotish Shastra, and Vijnanam to be presented in a holistic way for us to take this forward. And our Granthas also delineate many qualifications for a Ganaka or an astronomer, astrologer: accuracy, computational ability, observational skill, and understanding of the geometry. A lot of these requirements needed for an engineer of today. Our speaker also epitomized many of these in his talk. I hope this talk kindled the curiosity of some people and enabled you to not only think about Panchangam and aspects, and also appreciate the value of using and developing technology for our own use. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Karthik ji. It was real nice pleasure to hear from you about the Hindu, the Sanatana Dharma calendar system. What I really liked is that the sanctification of calendar was really beautifully brought about in your talk. We have this famous shloka, Titir Vishnu Tata Varaha Nakshatram Vishnurevacha Yogascha Karanam Cheva Sarvam Vishnuve Jagat. So we take everything as a manifestation of Swami, and what normally happens is that the more technical we go, we tend to lose that sanctification, or we tend to secularize all these sciences. But I really like the way that you presented from Vedas, and you said, like, okay, all these are like having the sanctity of Titivara Nakshatra, the basis you really nicely built upon the technical part of it. So I really thankful. I really enjoyed listening to your lecture. I really learned a lot from your lecture as well, from this workshop as well. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr.
Excuse me?
Yes, so thank you everyone for joining. Hope everyone has a really good evening, and I'll see you all next time. Namaskaram, Venakam.